Hey everyone, I wanted to talk through how I write a training block within emerging strategies. And I'll be using a real-life example. This is training that I just wrote for one of my clients and showing you this 5-step process that I use to just keep my thoughts organized and make sure that I'm addressing all the little details that go into making truly individualized training. The first step of 5 here is acknowledging the big picture. Where are we relative to the competition? Are there any block-specific goals that we ought to be considering? Maybe this is a hypertrophy block, and we are taking a step away from the highest intensities, just building a very strong base that we can exploit with future blocks. Or maybe we're 2 blocks out from a competition. We want to use the second best protocols and strategies and movements in order to set us up and use the best protocols and strategies for the final block directly leading into the meet. The first screen that I come to when creating a program is the program builder within the RTS website. Here I can assign it to any of my lifters. I can assign it to any future dates in their calendar. And then over here is a section that will automatically calculate stresses for each of the movements and protocols and everything that I add down here, which is what this section is for. Just which days do you want to add which exercises and how do you want that to look when it gets deployed to the lifter. The second step here is to organize things using constraints. So how many training days do they have access to? What's the frequency of the lifts that we need to meet? And then do these lifts and movements need to be allocated differently, either based on something about the lifter or how difficult it is to recover from, or based on time or some other limitation? So for my lifter here, he's got 4 days to train, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, but we can see pretty readily that Friday and Saturday have way more lifts and exercises than Monday and Wednesday. He simply has less time on Monday, Wednesday. We still need to take advantage of these days in order to get in some important work, but we need to reach a certain amount of total work, and so a lot of the extra movements just get pushed to Friday and Saturday when we have more time. Setting things up like this kind of just shows me the skeleton that, okay, I do have a plan to include a squat twice a week, a deadlift twice a week here, and then benching 4 times a week. And I can move things around from there and add variations and add protocols, but now I just kind of know what the skeleton looks like and know kind of the most constrained form of this program. The third step here is to consider the lifter feedback. This can be done in a variety of ways, depending on what you have access to. So this could be a video call after a block. This could be thoughts from the lifter or from yourself as you kind of go through the block and just have normal back and forth. Or this could be more targeted questions, either organically through conversation or sent out as a Google form. Here are a few examples. You probably want to know if there's any travel coming up that's going to disrupt training, or if the lifter is experiencing any pains. These are definitely really important to make sure that we don't give something that injures them. Or more nebulously, are you still enjoying training? Is your motivation still high? Did we do anything to training that is just disrupting that? Do we need to include a little bit more kind of biceps and lateral raises to make you look a little bit bigger and bring back the enjoyment of training? Or just giving them a space to ask some questions. Is there anything that I'm doing that is confusing that you want a little bit better of an explanation for? Or do you have any other comments or thoughts? Maybe their gym just got a new piece of equipment that they're really dying to use. That's a great opportunity to ask about it. The fourth step here is to incorporate collected data. This can be done in the form of block reviews, meta block reviews, stress balances, and even looking at the protocol types. So block reviews will just summarize the previous block of training. What rep ranges and RPEs did you use? Which exercises did you use? How did all the lifts trend? That sort of thing. Then meta block reviews will summarize a bunch of block reviews. So it'll start to show you, patterns in training, patterns in exercise variations that you've selected, and those can all be really helpful for forming future hypotheses. Stress balances are also important to consider because some lifters, maybe they really can't tolerate a whole lot of central stress, a whole lot of high intensity. And so you want to make sure that when you construct the program that the central stress isn't too high and would potentially disrupt their response to it and their progression during the block. And then some lifters for protocol type, maybe they respond really, really well to a top set and back down approach for their bench, but not so much for their squat. For their squat, for some reason, they just respond really well to a ramping protocol. That's important to review and consider as well. Then here is just an image of part of a block review. It shows me a trend of how the lifter's bench went during the block. And this gives me some important information, but it doesn't tell me the whole story. And down here, I can kind of account for more of that story. I can write down the total stresses and the stress balances here, which are important as I described before. And then I can write some more subjective thoughts below it as well. I can report that bench was trending well until the final week, where fatigue just hit way harder than expected. And it's not necessarily that we picked the wrong movements, but just that we may have been doing too much total work. And at least that should be a consideration for me to revisit, especially if I see this pattern in multiple blocks. This next screen here are some snippets from meta block reviews. So this one up here is a heat map for this person's squat, sorted by rate of gain. So brighter colors, or warmer colors rather, are going to be areas with faster rates of gain. And if you start to see patterns, if there's a particular rep range, 4 to 6 reps shows up for a lifter as just, they're all really warm colors, okay, great, 4 to 6 rep range is likely going to be something that I want to include in this lifter's blocks closest to a meet. Or maybe something else shows up. Maybe you see a diagonal here that kind of goes in this direction. That might indicate that there is a particular percentage range that a lifter is responding to. And that's really helpful to kind of know, and the heat map does a great job of organizing that. Or here you can organize and sort different exercises by how fast the rate of gain was, or what the peak 1RM of the block was. And by sorting in this way, we can start to see some associations like, oh, okay, maybe with the low pin squat and the tempo squat, this lifter just needed to work on control of the squat movement itself, and that's part of why it did so well during that block. The last thing is to put all the finishing touches in place. You're going to want to double check the protocols, make sure that they align with what you wanted to do and accomplish for the block. Add in any helpful notes, things that you want the lifter to keep in mind for any of the lifts. Verify that the training deployed correctly and that the lifter can see it. And then for me, what I like to do is record a video just covering my entire thought process around why I constructed certain things in certain ways. Why are we doing a 3-count pause here instead of a 2-count pause or a pin bench? Or why are we trying this different rowing movement on a different day? Just explain those things and make sure that the lifter understands that there was a lot of thought and intention put into the block, and give them an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions or state any concerns that they may have. So this is how all of that looks put together for this lifter. I can put the protocols in place here, and all the different decisions that went into why these protocols and these variations for this lifter is so long that it warrants its own separate video. But this is just how the final product looks once I've been able to consider it within the context of the person, within the context of the time frame, and incorporate all their feedback. That is how I typically write blocks within emerging strategies. Last step here would just be to record the video explaining all this to the lifter in a short and concise way, and that's how I do it. Let me know if you guys have any questions, if I can expand on anything in the comments below, but otherwise I'll leave it there and see you guys in the next one.